We're not getting the okay. No. Ja,
ich glaube, das ist das Falsche, aber wir können es jetzt
schauen wir mal. Yeah. We never start. Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
So ich has jetzt.
Ja, setz dich mal her. Der Wechselpunkt müsste am anderen sein.
Last session of the events, very important initiative that we started from Andrew. We have everything about its history, development, background, definitely about the civil society declaration. And I'm pleased that we have defined that we navigate this new declaration. Our first speaker today, my pleasure to introduce John Human, Director of the Division of Policy Analysis and Public Affairs.
Thank you very much. Certainly the division is responsible for the society unit, which is all favorite. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, representatives of the society, and indeed, each of this here today, as we gather for the final day of the conference for the United Nations Convention against Domestic Violence. Today is my important milestone. The five declarations for the most effective implementation of the freedom coordinated by the Alliance of NGOs for crime prevention and human justice. And it's many 2005. I'm very happy to be ready to hear inside. Ladies and gentlemen, as we have been hearing around the beach, forward and forward here. The posed by organized crime are immense. And the threat posed by organized crime is grown by today. The question posed to us is very simple. Do we do enough? And do we do it right? And the answer is no. And outright no. It is no. The traditional organized crime is exploiting various systems and technologies that help bring all roads close together. It is known that 82% of the global population lives in conditions where criminality significantly impacts their daily lives. Above all, it is known where the most likely impact of organized crime is on human lives. Organized crime doesn't just break laws, it breaks lives, it breaks families, it breaks the time. So you plan and drugs trade, so there is a kind of firearms and environmental crisis, criminal extension of falsifications, the violence, gathers multiple enablers around it, and it became more dangerous and legal than ever before. That is why we need a whole of society, a holistic approach. A new society are key in these efforts to address organized crime and its impact. These society organizations are frontlines, highly limited resources that with unwavering energy. Your rooted on the ground, providing crucial services and stepping in where state institutions are enabled of change to reach. You support the people that are proposing aims and all governments start communities. The simplified declaration being presented today is all overarching by civil against uncivil environment. It covers
That's not
main
easy,
areas
okay?
mobilizing a wide series of actions towards challenging organized crime and implementing UNTOC. With more than 100 names, the declaration outlines concrete proposals for strengthening international and stakeholder collaboration. By adopting a whole society and victim-centered approach, addressing urgent threats and putting human rights at the core of the fight against organized crime, the declaration is safe. These actions are not, they have contributed somewhat. Therefore, my organization is coordinated with humanitarian, regional and international organizations such as the UNTOC and the Life College. From our side, we will continue to be your advocates with member states to engage with the society in respective review process, including through the respective dialogues and voluntary pilot initiatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jean-Luc. Thank you for your support and looking forward to continued cooperation. You mentioned the work of the Alliance, and at my left, there is the chair of the Alliance, Ian Tennant. Ian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anna, and thank you, Jean-Luc, for those opening remarks. We've had this meeting scheduled today at 2 p.m. on the last day of this 12th UNTOC conference, and we're proud to present this civil society declaration. But I don't think we were expecting that it would be adopted before the resolutions of the conference. So congratulations, I think, to us as civil society for coming to consensus in advance. I think this is definitely a first of a kind, this declaration. The level of civil society engagement in this UNTOC Conference of Parties has been increasing markedly in the last few years. And as I understand from the Secretariat, there is, I think, 200 NGOs registered and participating here and 400 NGO participants participating in this conference. And I think it's remarkable the increasing diversity of the issues and the backgrounds of the NGOs that have been here this week. We had indigenous leaders here for the first time talking about what's going on in their communities and the threats that they face, as well as different criminal markets being talked about, whether it's antiquities, organized fraud, scam centers. So I think this declaration is a reflection of the growing interest and growing engagement that we've seen. So I'd like to thank my colleagues in the Alliance, Anna Alvatsi, my predecessor as chair, who started this process through the constructive dialogues a couple of years ago, Mr. Tarek Kosa, who you will hear from, a vice chair of the Alliance, who did, being frank, the majority of the work in putting together the substance of the declaration, Lisa Hartzeveld, who contributed on the crimes affect the environment, and other board members such as Jay Albanese, who were supporting this process. So if we can move to the next slide, just to put this declaration in context. Next one. Yes. So, we're at the 12th Conference of Parties, but I think one thing that's become increasingly clear is that the UNTOC is not a new convention anymore. The review mechanism that was negotiated over a long period of time is still only just getting going. We heard about Estonia being the first country to near completion, but this is only one review, and this is almost 25 years now. So we came to the conclusion, thank you, that it would be important to input alongside the official review with some civil society inputs, especially as the constituency of civil society has been growing over that period. And this doesn't work. But thank you for giving it to me. It's very kind. Why do we want to do it? Why do we want to produce a civil society declaration? As I said, this came about through the constructive dialogue process over the last few years. The constructive dialogues are a new avenue for engagement for NGOs. We remain, I don't know what word I should use, but adamant that the working groups should not be closed to civil society. We don't see this as either necessary or useful for the UNTOC and its review, but we do see the constructive dialogues as somewhere that it's been possible to engage quite meaningfully over the last few years. So out of that, we thought a declaration pulling together all the inputs that were done in the constructive dialogues and through our consultations would do 4 main things. First, raise the level of civil society engagement with member states, not something that just happens sporadically or ad hoc, putting it together in one place. Secondly, therefore, coordinating those inputs and disseminating them more effectively. And then thirdly, aside from we do advocate for civil society access in this declaration very strongly, but we also want to raise key substantive issues as well. We don't cover every type of crime. We don't cover every issue. This is impossible with the diversity of NGOs that we're working with, but there are core principles that we can all agree on, which are contained in the declaration, which I think many in the group of friends of civil society would also agree with as well. And ultimately, it builds a network of collaboration, and putting that all together, it demonstrates the value of civil society in the fight against organized crime. We don't want to just come and provide a declaration because it's a nice thing to do, or because we want to do it because we think there's value in it for the implementation of the convention. And it was delivered, well, it's being delivered now, actually, to the 12th Conference of Parties, and it's available online. And I have to update Jean-Luc's figures, but I think we're on about 230 signatures now, which I'm very pleased with, and I think demonstrates again the interest in this declaration. Just very quickly on the next slide to explain how we came through this. As has already been mentioned, we collected the feedback through the constructive dialogues process. So all the statements, all the chair's summaries, we went through them all to find the common points. We also had feedback and consultation sessions in the margins of the constructive dialogues in the I forget the name, multi-stakeholder preparatory days that were organized by the Civil Society Unit, and we're grateful for them, for the space that created. And then we presented a couple of drafts and then a final draft in September, which could then be commented on before releasing it for the signature just before the conference. I think the signatures have been temporarily closed, but we will open them again after this meeting until the end of the conference. Then we will have a final number. So thank you for everybody who has signed up. Next slide, please. This is the structure of the declaration. As I say, we concentrate very much on the role of civil society and the need for access in this UNTOC process. We identify a few key cross-cutting issues which have been prominent in discussions this week: gender, human rights, and victims. We go to the core of the convention. Tarek will talk more about this, on how civil society can enhance the international cooperation and technical assistance activities. And then through the 3 protocols: trafficking in persons, smuggling of migrants, trafficking in firearms, and the specific and different ways actually civil society can input into those engagement on those protocols. And lastly, I think as a growing issue of concern, and one that's being addressed in some way by the conference this week, is the crimes that affect the environment. So we have a specific section on that. And lastly, accelerating implementation. So we're not only concerned about civil society access to the review process, but also whether the review process is working more effectively and whether there's sufficient transparency and engagement. So just very quickly on the role of civil society before I hand over, and cross-cutting issues before I hand over to Tariq. If we can go to the next slide. We include a number of key points: protecting civil society space, not only at the international level here, but also at the national level, pushing back on attempts to limit or silence civil society voices, specific reference to NGOs working on corruption. I see our friends from the UNTOC coalition here. And this, we're very much concerned. It's the same type of people in civil society that are uncovering organized crime and corruption issues. And then our disappointment in the current engagement levels in the review mechanism. Next slide, please. We call for more resources to enhance civil society research and include it more in the process. We emphasize the role of civil society as a bridge builder between communities and governments. And let me take this moment to recognize the presence of His Excellency, the Ambassador of Pakistan. This has been one of the countries where this bridge building role has really been emphasized. Mr. Kosa, who will speak, has really built a very nice link between NGOs and the government to work on the civil society review, and we thank the government of Pakistan for their engagement. And we reaffirm the need for civil society engagement along with that. If we go on to the next slide, I will very quickly talk about the cross-cutting issues. We see growing polarization on the issue of gender and how it should be integrated in the crime prevention criminal justice programming, but also in programming around the UNTOC. We see some positive developments. We know there is a group of friends of gender, which we have engaged with, and the UNODC is doing work in this area. But also human rights is of key concern. With the UNTOC, where mentions of human rights are kind of implicit rather than explicit, it's important to make sure that we as civil society are doing what we can to highlight the vulnerabilities. One thing that really came through strongly, especially in the trafficking in persons consultations, was the role of survivors in informing responses. This is something that's moved on since the original definition of victims in the trafficking in persons protocol. There is new language, there's a kind of new culture that needs to be acknowledged. And yeah, I think I've covered the last two, but the very last point is legal aid and the importance of access to justice, not only for victims, but also for all of those in contact with the justice system. I hand back to the moderator.
Thank you very much. We will continue now, but before I wanted just to say something that it's very dear to me, and that is in the declaration, the cross-cutting issues are mainstreamed throughout the various substantive topics. So it's not really a separate section that talks about gender and that's it. You will find important references to gender, human rights, and the victim-centered approach throughout the document. And with this, I would finally like to give the floor to Tariq Kosa, who really take a leading role in the finalization of the declaration. Tariq representing the Center for Governance Research and a vice chair of the Alliance. Tariq, please.
Thank you, Anna. Ladies and gentlemen, as Ian said, this is historic first. A civil society declaration pleading for constructive engagement, a bridge builder between the state and society. This is the result of collective teamwork by the Alliance of NGOs, so ably steered by Anna Alwazi and Ian Tennant. Ian has mentioned the cross-cutting issues in this declaration, but very important cross-cutting issue, of course, is the international cooperation and technical assistance. To truly target the transnational aspects of organized crime, open dialogues and information sharing across borders are paramount for the promotion of international cooperation to address organized crime. Next slide, please. After the cross-cutting issues, now we come to the specifics of protocols in this UN convention. And to enhance the impact of trafficking in persons protocol, the role of survivors has become essential to a more holistic and effective understanding of the phenomena of trafficking in persons and its effect on the people. So state parties and CSOs should increase attention towards long-term rehabilitation and livelihood support for all survivors of trafficking to create economic opportunities and reduce their vulnerability to re-trafficking. Next slide, please. Smuggling of migrants, evidence-based research led by civil society is needed to identify global hotspots, understand their underlying factors and drivers through innovative approaches at national, regional, and global levels. The promotion of broader strategies to manage migration, including safe and legal pathways, should be integrated with efforts to implement the protocol. Next slide, please. The firearms protocol. Considering the key role of firearms trafficking and related offenses in transnational organized crime, the links between arms trafficking and other criminal markets, as well as with lawful and unlawful trade of firearms and diversion, should be further explored, and by making use of data collected by civil society. The contribution of civil society to the review mechanism in this area may be further emphasized through better connection with other relevant multilateral mechanisms, such as the Arms Trade Treaty and the Program of Action on Small Arms and Light Weapons, as well as regional instruments. Next slide, please. May I now hand it over? So this is the conclusion of my part. Lisa will take over.
Of course. Thank you for having me today. My name is Lisa Harteveld. I'm the Director of External Relations and Communications at the Wildlife Justice Commission, and I'm also a member of the board of the Alliance. Crimes that affect the environment, as you all know, there's often serious transnational organized crimes, and the revenues are estimated between 110 and 281 billion annually. They include a broad range of crimes, including the trafficking in wildlife, waste, illegal mining, illegal logging, and pollution, and are often facilitated by corruption across global supply chains and converge with other crimes such as drug trafficking and money laundering. The harm caused by such crimes is humongous and impacts all areas of society by undermining the rule of law, degrading the environment, contributing to the global climate crisis, and jeopardizing public health. We therefore, first of all, in the declaration, welcome the growing recognition by state parties of the role of the UNTOC in addressing such crimes, including at this session. This is a vital step not only to combat criminal networks, but also for the survival of the world as we know it. Considering the enormity of the issue, however, there is a need for a more meaningful and coordinated whole of society approach. UNTOC resolutions 10.6 and 11.3, as well as the draft resolution on crimes that affect the environment submitted to this session, encourage states to strengthen their cooperation with relevant stakeholders, including civil society organizations, consistent with Article 31, Paragraph 5 of the UNTOC. More concrete action to effectively combat organized criminal networks profiting from crimes that affect the environment and the corruption enabling them requires a more meaningful and coordinated whole of civil society approach. Effective responses require collaboration across various sectors, including with civil society, and the use of existing tools under the UNTOC, such as the provisions on special investigative techniques and joint investigations, alongside efforts to review and update the criminal justice framework. Civil society plays a crucial role in promoting the implementation of the UNTOC to prevent and combat crimes that affect the environment, and the Civil Society Declarations outlines a couple of examples. Civil society organizations can provide technical assistance to train those in charge of investigating, prosecuting, and adjudicating such crimes. They also help strengthen legislative and policy frameworks to prevent and combat crimes that affect the environment and associated corruption, and help identify any gaps. Intelligence gathered by civil society organizations is often instrumental in supporting successful investigations and prosecutions in such cases. And CSOs also help fill knowledge gaps, contributing to the science base that underpins informed decision-making and play a vital role in raising awareness around those crimes. Public-private partnerships are also highlighted to be crucial, with cooperation needing among state parties, private sectors, NGOs, academia, and the media to enhance the integrity of legal supply chains and conduct financial investigations. This civil society declaration also underlines the importance for state parties to provide a safe and enabling environment to those who expose, report, and fight crimes that affect the environment and associated corruption, and ensure robust whistleblower protection. The declaration encourages the UNODC to regularly monitor the situation of civil society stakeholders working to expose and combat these crimes. And Ian already referred to them earlier, but we've all heard from and seen the community leaders present at the UNTOC COP this week. They are key in raising awareness and bringing crimes that affect the environment and other converging crimes to light in their regions. They and others should be protected against the significant threats and dangers that they face in exposing and combating crimes that affect the environment and associated corruption. It is for this reason that I'd like to end the part on the crimes that affect the environment by saying that we also very much welcome the draft resolution that was tabled by Brazil, France, and Peru at this session, which aimed to address many of these issues, including provisions recognizing the role of civil society, incorporating civil society as participants in the proposed open-ended intergovernmental expert group meeting on crimes that affect the environment, as well as provisions aiming to provide effective assistance to and protection for those who contribute to preventing and combating crimes that affect the environment along the world. With this session almost at its end, we hope that the final texts remain ambitious and constitutes a leap ahead in supporting the role of civil society organizations in the collective fight against crimes that affect the environment across the globe.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lisa. We had an overview of the various sections of the Civil Society Declaration, and now we are going back to see how to use this instrument to accelerate the implementation. So, Ian may want to give us just a little bit of an idea of how we can move forward, also making use of the reference that Lisa made about civil society supporting some of the initiatives through the resolutions, etc. Ian.
Thank you very much. If we can just go to the last slide. Sorry that it's me speaking again. I will speak very quickly, but I just wanted to say, how do we bring this all together, whether it's on crimes that affect the environment, but also whether it's on trafficking in firearms. There's great civil society-led initiatives which the Alliance has been involved in to try and increase data collection and look at how it reduces armed violence. There are groups of NGOs working on trafficking in persons, supporting victims, and bringing that data together. The same for the other criminal markets that can all be addressed by the convention. I'd like to go back to Jean-Luc's opening remarks where he asked the question, is enough being done? To which he answered no. And we of course agree, but that doesn't mean there's no hope. It doesn't mean that we can't do our best to build on the momentum that we have over the last few years in civil society and with countries who have partnered with civil society, including Pakistan and the group of friends which will be represented shortly. We think that now is the time to say it isn't enough. We need to redouble efforts. We need to put more transparency into the review mechanism. We need to put more engagement in the review mechanism so that we can get better data out of it to drive forward progress into the future. And I think that's something we can all agree on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. And indeed, we have invited a friend. So pleased to give the floor to Michael Davidson, the first secretary of the UK mission to the UN. And the UK is now leading this group of friends of multi-stakeholder participation in UNODC matters. Michael, please.
Thank you very much. So, hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Michael Davidson. I work for the UK mission. And thank you to all the panelists for your presentations. It's not only interesting, it's also heartening to hear that so much activity is taking place behind the scenes. I'll try and explain a little bit why we think it's so important to have this activity going on, how that relates a little bit to our work, and why we have this group of friends. So I guess the first question is, well, what do we do? We're diplomats. It seems I thought I would come here to Vienna and spend a huge amount of time speaking about crime and other criminal measures and criminal justice systems. I've spent a lot of time talking about commas and semicolons and sitting in windowless rooms like this, trying to imagine how we can work together better in order to affect real change on the ground. It's not an easy thing to imagine from in our bubble, our diplomatic bubble. And that's really why it's so important that we have contact with people who are actually out there working with other people who are affected by crimes, who are fighting crime, and who also have some answers that we frankly can't think of or imagine from within the confines of the VIC on a Thursday night at 11 o'clock last night as we were working on crimes that affect the environment. It's not the most conducive atmosphere for creativity, for exploration, or for really getting down to the business of solving crime. So we need contact. We need civil society to come and speak to us. And we need to attend as many of these types of meetings as we can so that you can inform us what is happening out there in the real world. The second point I want to make is a little bit on decision making. So we go through these processes of negotiating texts, our normative documents. We spend hours and hours and hours on them. And then we walk away and we move on to the next normative document. And of course, we leave it to UNODC to try and look at those documents and think, how can we use these to affect our work? But I would really love to see a little bit more of us working with you, maybe in the way that's set out in the declaration, to think about how we implement these documents, because implementation is our core business, or should be our core business. We're here as the Conference of State Parties to think and look at how the convention is being implemented and its protocols are being implemented on the ground. How are the decisions we're making actually affecting real change? And we can't do that alone. I think bridge builder was a great a phrase, and I really thank distinguished ambassador from Pakistan for being here and highlighting this work, because the civil society can act as a bridge between communities and decision makers. If we don't know what's happening, then how can we make decisions that A, will be effective, and B, make sense? So we thank you for that work, and I think the declaration sums up some of that thinking really well. So I will be circulating it amongst my colleagues, and we should all read it. And I think it's really heartening that so many people have signed up to the declaration and put so much work into it. So thank you. We have a group of friends. So what is a group of friends? A group of friends is a collection of member states that come together and have an informal agreement that we all agree on the same thing. So in the case of multi-stakeholders, we all agree that multi-stakeholders, civil society, should be part of our decision-making, that they're important. I think there's, how many, 45, something like this, member states that all agree to that and want to actively and collectively work on that issue. So we have meetings to try and think about how we can open the door. And I think it's really is a door that is half open. We have meetings like this and civil society participation is increasing. But when it comes to our decision-making and our negotiations, we're extremely protective of our role as governments. I would like to see that opened up a little bit more. I think we can still maintain our decision-making authority whilst having fruitful consultations and taking the best ideas from civil society. It's not really a kind of polar opposites. We can do both at the same time, I think. And that's why, final point, extremely important to have documents like this. So if we don't know what it is that you want, we don't know how you want to interact with us, what you think about issues, then how can we begin to have the conversation? So it's a really good starting point. I hope that it will lead to many, many fruitful discussions in the future. And I hope to be part of those and that they take part of our conferences, of our negotiations, of our discussions in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Michael. This is really music for us who started this initiative, for all of us who took the first steps in this direction. Thank you for your support, Ambassador. Thank you very, very much for being here, because this is really the type of response that we need. We were so good that we have 10 full minutes for discussion. So please, if you can raise your hand and introduce yourself, the floor is open.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to thank the Alliance of NGOs on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, and also thank some of the panelists again for the opportunity. My name is David Ugolo. I work for an organization called African Network for Environment and Economic Justice based in Nigeria. We're working on issue of UNTOC and organized crime. We're actually currently doing some project with support from UNTOC, doing some human trafficking contest analysis in the Niger Delta, and also the co-chair of UNTOC Coalition. Interestingly, this link between UNTOC and UNTOC is a very good way to take this forward, because there's hardly any crime back home. For example, in Nigeria, human trafficking, oil theft in the Niger Delta, that is not linked to issue of corruption. Somebody is benefiting. And the only way to tackle organized crime is to make sure that there is no impunity, that the benefit do not end in people's pocket. And it would be good to know how exactly this will really work out, because obviously the North-South power relation plays out when it comes to solutions, providing support, capacity, technical assistance. It would be good to hear from the panelists, how could this play out back home in Nigeria, across the West African region? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We take 2-3 questions. I have Ugi Zvekic and then the lady there. Please, Ugi.
Thank you. I'm Ugi Zvekic, Senior Advisor at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime and representative of the European Public Law Organization. First of all, I would really like to congratulate on the declaration. It's very well done. It was needed, and I think it has this cross-cutting approach, including gender, human rights, and victims. And it is about victims that I would like to say a few words. Just to remind you that 39 years ago, but 40 years ago, during the UN Congress in Milan, civil society managed to have declaration on the rights of victims of crime and abuse of power adopted by the Congress and then by the General Assembly. 40 years passed since then. At that time, 40 years ago, organized crime issue was just entering into the international discourse. Corruption was present a little bit through the title of the declaration, Victims of the Abuse of Power. And of course, the other sorts of victims were not even mentioned. So after 40 years, and I think this declaration is a good tool to go towards the Congress that is taking place in 2026. It will be 41 years after the declaration, to update it and to catch the position of the victims of organized crime, which are not even mentioned in that declaration, to update those about the other sorts of crime, including corruption. So this is my call for the Alliance, together with the World Victimological Society, the UNCA Coalition, etc., to actualize, to put as a sort of an action plan on the victim issue that is cross-cutting this attempt for updating of the declaration, and maybe one day making a part of all 3 conventions that we have now, meaning organized crime, corruption, and cybercrime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was a lady there. Can you please introduce yourself, please?
Good evening, Chair. I'm Advocate Tanya Jha from Mumbai, India, and I'm also the founder director of our umbrella arm called Kadira Foundation. So a part of our focus initiative is that we deal with survivor of trafficking in Mumbai, since Mumbai is the Asia's biggest red light district. So we do provide legal aid services, along with we try and give them access of healthcare under the SDG 3.8 of universal health coverage. So about our grant, the practicality of dealing with victims is the apathy of police department. We do not get any support from the local police when it comes to the rescue operation, as well as when if the victim get in touch with us or calls us. So how is UNODC coming in picture? Because every country is sovereign country, and I understand that India is part of signatory to UNTOC. So in terms of dealing with the police machinery is something that I would want some solution from the chair, that how do we take this part forward. And as well as rehabilitation after, even the victims are rescued, many a time that they do not want to go back, because of the poverty, and then they want to continue the life that they're living in the red light district. So my focus area is also to try and find a solution of rehabilitation and integration of them in the society. So any inputs in that?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good point. And I would like to give the floor to the panelists. So who is going to respond? Please, Michael.
Maybe if I respond to the first question. So first of all, thank you very much for your question. It was a question between how do we start to link up a little bit between our conventions? How can we look at corruption at the same time as organized crime? How can we look at organized crime at the same time, I guess, now as cybercrime? That's a very good question, because actually what we see more and more in our negotiations, in our discussions, is that some member states want to maintain a division between different conventions, that rules exist in one context, they were agreed, let's not revisit them. There's another set of rules that exist over here for this convention. Let's just focus on those, and let's try not to merge as much as possible. I think that's understandable, because it's a kind of way to keep things in their boxes. I mean, if you have just a mess, it's not good for anybody. But there is much more we can do to learn the lessons from one conference to another conference. I agree with you that if there's corruption, that's an endemic, systematic problem that affects all types of crime, whether that's corruption in government or corruption in local law enforcement, or in any of the law enforcement agencies that may wish to be called upon to try and solve some of these issues. So for us in the UK, I think in the 80s, we went through a process of addressing corruption. We tried to bring those lessons to other parts and other bits of the system here. But it's very difficult. If you start speaking about corruption and you're at the UNTOC, you'll be told, why are you speaking about UNCAC issues? So yeah, we will keep trying. I think the best thing that you can do is probably keep informing us, keep telling your government as well that corruption is an underlying cause. It won't be the same for everybody. You know, in some countries, corruption won't be the underlying cause. It may be, I don't know, development issues, poverty. It could be other issues. But if for you and you believe that corruption is one of the key pillars to the criminal networks in your country, tell your government, tell us, and speak about it as much as possible. We're here to listen, so hopefully we hear that and we start to speak to each other about those issues. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michael. Jean-Luc, you wish to respond to something? Please.
Thank you. No, I just would like to take up the question of the lady who is working indeed in difficult circumstances in Mumbai. And the question you raise is indeed, I mean, such a pertinent one, but such a complex one as well, because we do know as well from experience, I mean, how difficult it is in trying to retract people in situations which they, for whatever reason, might perceive as better than what we can offer them, and which is indeed often related as well with stigma. It's often related with how can I go back even to my society, to my community? I mean, with this kind of experience which I had, am I not better off to stay where I am? And I know how hard and difficult that is. We do have, I mean, and you see my blue heart here. We have a blue heart solidarity campaign set up, and the UK has become a member of that as well. It is more than advocacy. It's really trying to reach out to, first of all, the Blue Heart is indeed showing sympathy with the victims of human trafficking, especially women and children. But we do have as well a trust fund, I mean, where we work with several different NGOs together in empowering them with not massive amounts of money, but that key funding, which enables them to reach out to victims on, as you mentioned yourself, health issues, psychological issues, legal issues. I mean, issues as well related to criminal justice. I mean, they're victims. They are not really where they want to be. So don't consider them as anything else than victims. So to have that entire framework together, I wouldn't mind to be in contact, I mean, with those people, I mean, working within UNTOC and all those topics, and hopefully the experience which you have, and we might find as well within the NGO group, can help to bring us forward on that complexity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Luc, for this important information. I know that Tariq would like to add a comment, please.
Thank you. Yes, we feel there is a clear nexus between corruption and organized crime. Before drafting this declaration, we examined the recent civil society declarations, especially Atlanta, Georgia, UNTOC civil society declaration in December 2023. We also examined the Rome Declaration, SDG 16 of 2023. So therefore, it's a broader, impact is in the context of transnational organized crime. That is why this declaration has many cross-cutting issues clearly identified. So this is a starting point, a way ahead, and a forging a joint strategy between the states and society, which is emphasized. It's a positive declaration. So therefore, that's the kind of spirit with which it has been drafted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. After all, it builds on the outcomes of the constructive dialogues, so it is on the constructive contribution. Lisa, you wanted to add something?
And just briefly, maybe just in line to add to what Tariq just said in terms of the declaration recognizing the links between corruption and organized crime, including in relation to crimes that affect the environment. And maybe just bring it beyond the declaration that the Alliance also is a forum where civil society can be brought together to see how we can collaborate to bring these calls to action at the multilateral level. For example, we have a working group on crimes that affect the environment that looks at this nexus as well. So I just wanted to point that out, and anyone who is interested in joining in any of our working groups, please do reach out to us.
Thank you very much. And finally, Ian, please, a couple of words of wisdom to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everybody for the interesting and thoughtful questions. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of the points. Firstly, the north-south divide that was raised by David. I mean, for me personally, this is something that I've always seen as a bit of a flaw with the implementation of both the UNTOC and the UNCAC, where the main outcome is the technical assistance given to countries who request it, dependent on funding. And this makes it seem like both the crimes of both the issues of organized crime and corruption are a problem only in the global south that can be fixed by the global north. And this is simply not true. Every country has problems with organized crime. Every country has problems with corruption. But the one thing that makes you more resilient to those phenomena is having a good engagement between a strong civil society and a strong government working hand in hand. So that's really what we're trying to aim towards in this declaration. Just something future facing. Well, Ugi mentioned the 1985. This seems like a long time ago, but we've got opportunities to update this. The questioner mentioned the issue of survivors and how this is reflected. I think this is something that needs to be looked at as we move into not only future UNTOC meetings, but also the next Crime Congress, which takes place. As you mentioned, there are regional preparatory meetings coming up for this Congress. So we don't just wait for the Congress itself in 2026. The first one starts in January in Bangkok, those of you based in Asia. And then there'll be a series of others, one in Europe, in Vienna, I forget where all of them are, but they're all taking place between January and April, Costa Rica, and maybe the civil society unit can help us disseminate that information. But what we'll be doing with the Secretariat here, I don't think the Secretariat of the Congress is here, but is really advocating for as open access as possible for civil society into those regional preparatory meetings, whether in person or online, so that those views can be taken into account as states begin the process of drafting their outcome documents and declarations. So with that, I will finish. Yeah, give you the floor back to you.
Thank you very much. No, thank you, everyone. We should close. The ambassador, fantastic. We have the opportunity to hear from the ambassador, please.
Thank you. Sorry for standing between you and the close of this event, but thanks to all of you sitting on the podium for this very interesting event. And I thank you for acknowledging my presence over here as well. We fully acknowledge the important role civil society has to play as a bridge between policymakers and various stakeholders in the society. And there can be no second opinion about the whole of society approach to addressing the challenges of crime. And as a member state, Pakistan will definitely be looking forward to examining the declaration by the civil society and following through on some of its recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ambassador. We couldn't have a better conclusion. So I think that we can close, but please, if there is any further comment that you would like to give us, don't hesitate to approach the Alliance to be in contact with us. We really look forward to having this declaration as a live, dynamic document to take it to different fora, as Ian mentioned, and to have the opportunity to include many other issues as they will become visible. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Thank you.